In this foreign exchange lesson, I'm going to shift so many curves, your head will probably spin. So please pause and rewind, rewatch anywhere where you feel you have lost me or where you become confused. Take it slow, take a deep breath, and then try again. But before I jump in, I just want to recap the definition of the foreign exchange rate. It is the price of one currency expressed in terms of another currency. And the factors that affect the demand and supply of foreign exchange, they are called the shifters. They are income, tastes, price levels, and interest rates. It is very important for you to understand that if any one of these variables change, the demand for Forex will also change. Note that each one of these represents a different graph. And for the purposes of this presentation, every time I refer to South Africa, I will be using green. And every time I refer to the United States of America, I will use red. So when we look at the first shifter, tastes and habits, they tell us that the United States tourists love visiting South Africa. So we have to go and determine, are we talking about South Africans here or are we talking about Americans? Now, obviously, we are talking about the Americans, so we are going to only use red. Now we have to say, what will Americans demand? They demand the rand when they come to South Africa. So the demand for South African rands will increase. But we are going to stay with America now. What must America supply in order to get more rands? They have to supply more dollars. So see that we look at the demand and the supply of American dollars here, or the demand and supply from Americans with American dollars and South African rands. So Americans demand more rands. In order for them to increase the amount of rands they get, they have to supply more dollars. And remember I said America is only red. We can't work with the demand curve over here because that is South Africa. We have to work with the red supply curve. And we've established that Americans increase the supply of dollars in order to get more rands. The new equilibrium is at an increased quantity, but at a lower price. That means that the dollar depreciated because where they previously got 15 rands for every dollar that they supplied, they now only get 12 rands. When you look at it from a South African point of view, we are still working with the red curve. The demand for South African rands increased. So over here, our new equilibrium position is at a higher quantity of rands, and you will see once again that the dollar depreciated because previously they had to supply us 7 American cents in order to obtain 1 rand. Now they have to give us 8 American cents in order to get 1 rand. In the same voice, I have to say that because the dollar depreciated, the rand appreciated. Now we look at the next one, and I'm going to focus on the shifter relating to income. When the South African government increases taxes, this means that the South African citizens will have less disposable income, less money to spend, and maybe they will buy less American goods. Therefore, what happens with South Africans? They demand less US dollars. And we are going to stay with the green, we're going to stay with South Africa because they demand less US dollars. They also supply less South African rands. They don't need to convert their rands into dollars because we're importing less. So on the curve, when we have less disposable income, we supply less rands. So our supply curve, the green one relating to South Africa, shifts to the left. The equilibrium position is at a lower quantity of rands, but the rand appreciates because where we previously gave the Americans 1 rand for 7 American cents, they now have to give us 8 American cents in order to obtain this rand. From an American point of view, we can say that because South Africans are not going to buy American goods, South Africa is green, we demand less American goods. The new equilibrium point indicates that the rand appreciates because of this. Because previously, we had to pay 15 rands in order to purchase a dollar. Now, we only pay 12 rands to get that dollar. Our third shifter relates to price levels. So over here, a higher inflation rate in South Africa means that our local goods become more expensive. Remember, inflation measures increases in prices. So the citizens of the country may decide to rather import goods because the South African goods are too expensive. They will therefore demand more American dollars. Let's stay green. When we demand more American dollars, we have to supply more South African rands. The problem with the higher inflation rate is a double whammy occurs because if South African goods become more expensive, this will discourage the exports of our goods and services. So Americans wouldn't want to buy our expensive products. Now, Americans, the red, will supply less American dollars because they demand less South African goods or services. So graphically, when South African products become too expensive due to the inflation, we want to import goods. So South Africans will supply more rands in order to obtain dollars. Because of the double whammy though, Americans demand less of our expensive goods and services, less of our rands. So the demand curve will also shift to the left. So the currency depreciates twice. The rand weakened substantially, where we previously received 7 cents for 1 rand, we will now only get 5 cents for 1 rand. From the American perspective, South Africans, the green line, demand more American goods or services. There's an increase in demand. So the rand depreciated. Instead of paying 15 rands to obtain a dollar, we have to pay 17 rands for this dollar. And Americans don't want to buy our expensive goods. So the supply of the American dollar decreases. And this shifts the equilibrium point up. The rand depreciates even further. We now have to pay 19 rands in order to get $1, where we previously only paid 15 rand. Remember, this works like a coin. There are two sides to a coin. If the rand depreciates because of inflation, the American dollar will appreciate and vice versa. Now let's look at interest rates. If the United States have higher interest rates, this means the American citizens will invest their money in their own country. They are not going to ship their investments to South Africa because they get a good interest rate on their investments. They will therefore, Americans, supply less US dollars and demand less rands. Once again, we have this double whammy where South Africans will want to invest their money where the interest rate is high. So we demand more dollars. We want to convert our rands into dollars to make an investment in South Africa. So we supply more rands. Americans, like I said, will supply us with less dollars because they want to invest in their own country. This will appreciate the dollar. We now have to pay 17 rands for $1 instead of 15 rands. But South Africans increase their demand for dollars, making the dollar even stronger. and the rand weaker. From a South African perspective, because the Americans supplied less dollars, the demand for rands will also decrease, the shift to the left. The new equilibrium position indicates a depreciation of the rand. Now, when we increase the supply of our rands in order to invest in America, there is another downward shift. So we only get 5 cents for every rand, where we previously received 7 cents, the depreciation of the rand. Now, in my previous lesson, I gave you this table as a quick summary and my reference to the circular flow. I want to show you the following. Whenever we have a leakage from our economy, we can assume that our local currency will depreciate, and at the same time, the foreign currency will appreciate. If for whatever reason we have an injection into our economy, we can assume that our currency will appreciate, and at the same time, the foreign currency will depreciate. When we limit the leakages from our economy, we don't let the money leave South Africa, our currency will appreciate. But when foreign countries also limit their currency from leaking out of their economy, or they stop the injections from their country to ours, our currency will depreciate as well. These curves are in the previous lesson, but I want to show it to you graphically because it is really important. In this scenario, I made the local currency green and the foreign currency red. So the increase in the demand for a foreign currency over there. We want to exchange our local currency for foreign currency. So there's an increase in the demand for foreign currency. Will depreciate our currency. While if there is a decrease in the demand for foreign currency, our currency will appreciate. From the foreign perspective, if there is an increase in the supply of foreign currency, our currency or the local currency will appreciate. And if there is a decrease in the supply of foreign currency, our currency, the local currency, will depreciate. I hope this makes sense to you, and I will post new lessons as time progresses. Good luck.